Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. We got the band back together this week. Good to see everyone. Kellen, what's shaking?
Nothing much. Happy to have all the full crew back together.
Well, that's the other part of the crew that's been missing for a while. Mentioned something the other day about getting ready to come back. So get ready for the Teejmeister to jump in again. So it'll be good to see him. Anyway,
roll out the red carpet and let's get the gravy ready. The man is going to return here.
The gravy boat, we'll have to warm it up a little bit. It's gotten cold and crusty.
Yeah, but obviously happy to have Jim back. I know it was his pick for the Forbidden record. So, but jumping into some more thrash this week, feeling in a good mood about it as this kind of summer comes to a close.
Yeah.
So what I've been spinning here, well, a little preview. I guess we may mention this at the end, but over the weekend I got a album review finished for the channel. Sent it over to Marty's way. So
just downloaded it before we went live too.
Perfect. Yeah. So later on, you'll see a review for Desolate Divine by Prescription. And that inspired me to pull this off the shelf. This is from over a decade ago, but Blaspherian, Infernal Warriors of Death. Anyone's familiar with this project, sort of satanic death metal from the States, back around 2012, I believe that was released. But I hadn't spun that in a while, so pulled that back out to listen to it. Kind of continuing a little bit of last week's conversation. It's been a year that I've been spinning a whole lot of punk. And this came off the shelf. Man, I know when I did the nostalgia episode with Marty and Jurgen, I kind of talked a little bit about this, but I mean, this is from my childhood sounds like this, essentially. Bad Religion, Suffer. I think probably Bad Religion and Operation Ivy should be essentially blamed for my elementary school years in terms of the sound I was listening to, but classic record. And also just, I mean, album cover, everything about this feels, classic to me. And then this is a newer one. So 2025 is kind of coming together. Label out of Portland. But it's on Blackwater Records. This is Alienator Meat Locker. I mean, it's a fun little album cover there, but
it's no meat spreader, but it's close.
No meat spreader, but this is actually a little bit more of like a crossover record. So anyone's into like the kind of cryptic slaughter stuff, you may want to check out Alienator here in 2025. But been spinning this one, and obviously I did pull off prior for this week the first in this series, the Mental Devastation, Delusions and Mystery of the Self, Part 1. So that's what I've been spinning.
All right, good to see it. Jim, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be back.
Sorry you missed out on your pick last week, but
yeah, that really sucked. It
was a good listen. Thanks.
Yeah, you guys did a great job. I debated on doing it anyway from the hospital bed, but they kept coming in like every hour, like drawing blood and all kinds of crap. You know what I mean? Like constantly interrupting. So I was like, you know what? I'm just, I decided to pass on it.
That would be a metallurgy first, right? Blood on camera.
Yeah, hopefully a metallurgy last.
Metal.
First and last, hopefully.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. That happens again, but so we're gonna start out. I got this Obsession record, Methods of Madness. This is
I've never heard that band. I've always been curious.
This album rules, man. It was a blind buy. I came across it and I looked it up, and it had like a good 87% on archives, and this is good, kind of like like Queensryche style progressive metal, but really well done. Great vocals, great guitar playing, great phrasing. I think I'll probably bring this to the club at some point. I was really impressed with it. It was a great pickup, but nice to do some blind buys and work out. Just like
No, they were kind of friends with Fate's Warning back in the day. They were kind of close to each other.
Yeah, I think they are from Connecticut. Yeah, they are. They're from
Yeah.
New Haven. So yeah, same area. So
Yep.
yeah, but definitely cool stuff. Really, really enjoyed that. Another blind buy is this Sacrifice Sacrilege BC Party with God. This is some cool, very ugly, described by Southern Lords reissue, which this is not. This is original Alchemy Records press, but as a cult thrash. You do that with what you will, but yeah,
it's good. It's good shit. Yeah.
Yeah, you've heard Marty, so
Yeah, I got it on tape. They actually have that at RPM in town for way too much money. A reissue.
Yeah. Galaxy, Southern Lord, I have it. They reissued it recently, but this is a really killer, man. It's just ugly thrash, and it's like they couldn't decide. Like some of their stuff is like uber satanic, and some of it's like kind of like and just death and gruesome stuff. On the cover, it's like kind of like just all the things that's wrong with the society, sort of like a typical thrash thing. The Party with God is obviously a play on words. Like if their line is like where's God, and all this like horror, you know what I mean, kind of a thing. So, but yeah, I was really impressed. This is just really, really killer thrash here, man. I know they have a follow up too, so I want to check that one out. But yeah, this cover's got all kinds of heinous stuff on it. If you do a close up on it, just like everything that's sick about mankind. But yeah, another cool, really cool blind buy. I got lucky that day when I was out shopping, but on both of these records. And the last one, hails to Kellen for this. Got it in the mail. This is the Rathatus. Not even going to try to pronounce the name of it or the title. But
let Kellen do it. He practiced. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kellen.
Tobitskite. Orok Isertel, Lidercherang. I think I missed a word in there, but it's something like that.
Yep, that sounds right to me. But just utterly killer death doom. I mean, the guitar tone on this, it's god size. It's absolutely awesome. This is going to be on my year-end list. I really love this. I've listened to it over and over and over. It's just really killer death doom. So if you want some really thick guitar tone to just like crush your skull, pick this bad boy up. So but yeah, that's what I've been listening to. So all right.
Good to see you back and upright. Logan, good to see you.
Good to be here. It's kind of been a rough week for metal and extreme metal as a whole.
Jürgen Bartsch died.
I was gonna mention that just today. I didn't know Jürgen by name, but guy on the first couple Bethlehem albums. So yeah, awful. For me, the big, elephant in the room, no pun intended. Mastodon, Brent Hines, passing away on a week ago, last Wednesday night, actually. Totally crushed. A big Mastodon fan. I know Brent, of course, has his issues and stuff, but I think at his heart, he was just a rock and roll inspired ball of energy, and just hearing and seeing all of the outpours from everyone. Like literally, I've seen posts from people all over the metal, rock, blues, just pop cultural zeitgeist, weighing in on his passing. I think, on top of being problematic at times, he was a genuine, gentle soul. Well, that's what I would like to think. But he was also part of the weirdness that made Mastodon special in my mind, and part of the reasons why I've stuck around for up until the current era, and hopefully I'll continue to be a fan. But yeah, it was just crushing to see it happen the way it happened, and I was always still rooting for him to patch things up with the band, and now we'll never get to see the what if. The other thing, though, Sacramentum, Nisei, don't remember his last name, but Nisei passed 2 days ago. I really only know Far Beyond the Sun, or is that the album? But yeah, also a sad loss. So outside of that, it's finally starting to feel a little cooler, like 5 degrees cooler here. So Abigor Noctamin had to come off of the shelf for a couple spins, making me wish that it was, November, which will be here soon enough. Can't wait. Let the cold weather roll on. And then I'm going to some concerts coming up. I'm doing some concert preparation on Saturday. The biggest Southern sludge concert of the summer is rolling through their hometown. We got Crowbar and I Hate God with Thou opening on this New Orleans date. So been starting with some Crowbar, and I'll probably get to some I Hate God later in the week, I think. Time Heals Nothing. This is a bit more of a dirgy, straightforward Crowbar album, but it still brings the riffs, and yeah. Really actually a sad album too. Kirk makes you want to shed a tear or two on Through a Wall of Tears, that song. And then I'm seeing Bruce Dickinson as well on next Tuesday. So
he played Flash of the Blade, and they've never played that song before. That's like my favorite Bruce song. Favorite Bruce era.
I hope.
Song.
For me, I mean, it was not the cheapest concert I paid for. Not the most expensive either, but it'll be worth it if Flash of the Blade comes out, and if they play some off of the Chemical Wedding, because this is a banger album. To me, it feels like the blueprint of where Iron Maiden kind of went with their comeback, Brave New World. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind one or two of these, along with, I'm sure it's going to be a lot of the Mandrake Project, which is a good album.
Haven't heard it.
No complaints from me, but it's concerts next week. I will report back.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Good to see you as well. And I guess it's up to me. I've only got a few things I've spun. I've been busy dealing with crap. But yeah, I had a buying freeze forever, and I should still be on said buying freeze, but the old collector scum just rears its ugly head every once in a while, and been wanting to get this. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, but Grab, grab is what it looks like. I'm sure that's not how you say it. The name of the album is Cremis. That guy right there. It's on Prophecy. This thing is really, I'm assuming these guys are Norwegian. They sound Norwegian. I don't know for sure. I'm not going to take the time to look it up, but this is a very, very, very good CD. Gets a little long. I've only spun it twice. We got a promo for it. I meant to do a review for it, but that's just the way that goes. But excellent black metal. The weather is dropping. The temperature is dropping, and I'm inspired to listen to more and more black metal. And finally, to correct a wrong that I should have bought this when it came out, but I didn't. The Deepening by Vemod. This album is really, really good. I was kind of surprised how proggy it is. The last few songs in particular, there's a lot of non-metal stuff going on, which is good, talented, beautiful. These guys are kind of evolving away from black metal a bit, but not a bad thing at all. Super talented. First half of this is crushing, great, beautiful, very emotional record for sure. But check out Vemod, The Deepening. Very good stuff. And that's really all I have for this time. But yeah, we are going to be talking about the third full-length album from when my computer crashed, I lost my notes. Go ahead and tell us what the name of this album is. I can never remember, Kellen, while I load up.
Delusional Mystery of the Self, Part 2.
Oh, it's right at the top of our chat window. Excellent. All right. Oh, my notes. Most of my notes are gone too. This is so great when a computer crashes. I love it.
There's not a lot of them, right?
No. So. There's not a ton of notes, but I had all the band members and all that crap wrote down. And hopefully it didn't crash our. Anyway, while I sort this out, let's talk about our first thing is first impressions. Jim, since you weren't around next week, you get to go first.
Okay. This is really, really quality thrash, man. A nice kind of like, instrumental acoustic intro with some just shredding, well phrased leads over it, and then just dives right into the pummeling. And the first thing you notice is the fretless bass. It's like way up in the mix, Steve DiGiorgio / Sadist style. But really excellent playing, but it's not all that the band has to give. I mean, the riffs are really cool, definitely thrash, but there's just like this feeling of uniqueness throughout the record that kept me interested the whole time. Just there was a lot to give here, with vocals sounding like a lower register Sean Killian, like that's what it reminded me of, that kind of like that Violence spit that Sean Killian from Violence has, but without the high that seems to turn a lot of people off. It's more like lower register, so but it's got that same venom to it. It was just really cool. The drummer who really knows his way around his cymbals, really cool ride and cymbal work. I mean, these guys are just great musicians, great riff writers, just deliver some really, really powerful thrash that has dynamics. There's dynamics all over this, these guys shift in and out of clean passages and, faster and mid-paced things, without it seeming like abrupt, like it just kind of, and abrupt in the sense that this is really intense thrash, but it just seems like it's considered and thought out. They really kind of, planned out like what they wanted the songs to be, because they don't sound, it doesn't sound like they just stood around in a corner and hit play. Like these guys, it's like they really composed the music, took their time with it. All to say is there's a lot to give here on this record. There's a lot to accept as a listener, in a good way. And every time I listened to it, I heard something that I didn't hear before, which is always the hallmark of something special. So I mean, really grateful to Kellen for he's been sharing albums from the Chilean scene for a while to me, outside of the album club as well. And also, we all know about, his love for the Polish scenes, and, and this is great. She's shining some light on this, because this band needs to be heard, man. It's a band like this that's going to keep thrash, relevant, when it's played at this, level of love and sophistication. So yeah, man, this thing instantly grabbed me. It didn't let go. I mean, it's if you can tell, I really liked it. So it's really up my alley, and it helped me get over my pain of not being here for my pick last week for missing out on Forbidden, which was definitely a blow for me to miss that. But you guys did a really good job, by the way. You guys did a great job, and next time I think I will do it from the damn hospital bed.
Especially when it's thrash, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's all.
Couldn't have happened on one of TJ's picks or something oh no, I feel like I'm going to the hospital. Yeah.
Johnny Touch is coming. I can't make it, man.
You just got to time it right. Whenever you got to go back, just time it.
Yeah. All right. Good breakdown, Logan.
Yeah, 2025 Chilean thrash pick. Definitely Kellen doing the Lord's work here. My first time really checking out this scene and checking out this band, so I kind of went in blind, which was kind of a nice, refreshing experience. I went in, of course, knowing it was thrash, but there's so many different ways to thrash nowadays. Just going in with thrash on the mind, it could be death thrash, some kind of progressive thing, the crossover, or there's a lot of Pantera-isms out there. Not that Kellen would choose that, but it was still a very kind of eye-opening experience on the first listen, because I was definitely not expecting how proggy and bass forward and kind of off kilter the sound was on first spin. The dynamics were quite impressive though too, and also I could tell there was a big penchant for melody. Like it certainly seems like there's a lot of melody being woven by the guitar work. Of course, the initial highlight was the bass, like that bass tone being as high as it was, almost above the guitars at times, was pretty neat. It made me think of some tech death bands. Honestly, I don't know if they were drawn from like some Canadian tech death, like Beyond Creation style, or maybe more than likely they were thinking of Atheist and Cynic and stuff like that. But it definitely had me thinking of Death's Human at parts, just because of how the tracks were written. Yeah, I was immediately impressed. The vocals were, of course, a big question mark. I mentioned last week that I was not a fan of Sean Killian, and yeah, that might carry through if this guy has a similar attack and just delivery. Then maybe there's a theme here. We'll see. But initially, I was more focused on the instrumentation, and the vocals kept jumping out at me when I would least expect it. Because they kind of are pretty forward in the mix as well. So, but yeah. The production also took me a little bit to wrap my head around as well. I thought it was kind of a weirder, more narrow production, and we'll get to that as well. But definitely, it's just some other first thoughts. Still strong first impression. I was ready to dive into kind of the Chilean thrash as a whole this week.
Yeah, another blind listen for me too. Haven't heard of this band, and typically I'm not really well versed like Kellen is in the Chilean thrash stuff, but the stuff I have heard, like editing reviews for the channel and stuff, it seems super raw, over the top, aggressive, maybe some creatorism, some destruction stuff going on. Raw and ramshackle is a good way, but in a good way. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. This here was totally kind of blew me away how sophisticated it is. Sleek. The fretless bass work really adds a level of kind of a highbrow element to this thrash. And I'm kind of with Logan, the fact that the guy's vocals they're really good, I like them, but I find myself trying to spread those curtains to get past his voice to see out the window, which is the music. The music is so freaking good. The way that this band is so locked in step. Raw and ramshackle like my ex-wife. Yep. Yeah, the music is so well done and executed, and I couldn't wait for the music breaks. A lot of the music breaks on here that lead up to the solo, holy shit. Some of the best moments on the album are around the solo, where the vocals fall away and they have time to explore. But other than that, I'm hearing late 80s, I'm hearing some US, I'm hearing some European technical stuff, I'm hearing bits of Corner in there, maybe a little Watchtower at times musically. It's a quite impressive shot of thrash metal that certainly is rooted. It's like a modern take of the old school, but it doesn't it really holds the old school in high regard, but it doesn't sound dated, which is it's weird to say that, but really, really good, well written music. What did you think, Kellen? Obviously you picked it.
Yeah, so this has been a source of my attention for a while now. Really, like over the past decade. Well, the Chilean thrash scene, I mean, I did a whole video detailing sort of the roots of it and the history of the country, and sort of the social and historical sort of influence that went into it. But over the past decade, just kind of speaking more directly to this album, Mental Devastation, I've kind of positioned them. I'd heard their first record, which was good, but there's a sort of I want to say 6-year gap in between the first record that comes out. Oh man, it's 8 years. Red Skies in 2013, which was good, but kind of I didn't think there was anything necessarily exceptional about it. By the time we got to Delusion of Self in 21, which was released on Blood Harvest, for me, it very much sort of brought them into like within that Chilean scene, a bit more of like a progressive sound amongst their peers. And I agree with sort of Marty's assessment. One of the unique things about this is thrash, you know, it was mentioned early on in the chat, can be really tricky in terms of there's so many pitfalls that I think younger bands can fall into. And to Marty's point about it sounding dated, or also I think often what happens is it leans a little bit into sort of a blackened thrash or a death thrash. And it kind of pushes it away from something that feels sort of purely rooted in the genre, which isn't a bad thing by any means. But there is, for me at least, sort of this desire to see younger bands at least nailing, I think, what the genre had to offer. You know, when you listen to, you know, Forbidden last week, like that is very much a thrash record for me. You don't need to use any sort of subgenre tag along with that. So finding bands now that can do that, I think, is difficult. And over the past decade, you know, Mental Devastation is one of the bands coming out of Chile, which has proven to be able to produce quality bands at scale, meaning it's not just one good band over the course of a record, you know, over the course of so many years. It's like there's consistent turnout from Unspeakable Acts, which has a relationship with Dark Descent. So there's some access there, but even bands like, you know, Blood Harvest, I mentioned, was where Mental Devastation previously was released. This came out on Nube Negra, which is a Chilean label. So I guess they had just had a one contract deal with Blood Harvest or one album deal. And then I was happy to see that Witch's Brew for European distribution picked them up. And Cheryl's been fighting the cause, like
for a long time.
Signing young thrash bands like in their infancy, and letting them sort of grow into, right, like the first Toxic Holocaust band, which record was released on her label. And obviously that band would have gone on to be more successful and more visible, so on and so forth. But back in whatever 2011, I think, when that record came out, no one knew, right? And I think it's interesting where these smaller labels are trying to hold on to some aspect of thrash, because I think a lot of people have dismissed the genre as still being relevant, to Jim's point, in 2025 and beyond. So, but I'll kind of, I knew that I was excited for this record, and it did not disappoint. I'll just say that. So, my question for this evening, just forgive me, it's got a little bit of context here. So, in the 21st century, thrash metal, more or less, more than any other genre, I should say, has struggled to find a generational foothold, a sincere and meaningful case for posterity, like the iconic bands that preceded them in the 1980s. The Chilean scene today, specifically younger bands, seem to be the exception to the rule, creating solid thrash albums and in some ways familiar, in other ways finding operational room for creativity, without any sense of irony, self-deprecating humor, or reaching into extreme metal for authenticity. Mental Devastation and bands like them did not come from the biggest name countries who helped build the genre. I'm talking about the US, Germany, Western Europe, but instead a localized scene with a whole lot less global exposure and resources. Do we see so much duplication and parody in metal today? So it's just not just thrash, but death metal, black metal, etc., because of our geographic and historical bias? And in 2025, are the American and Western European metal communities still capable of producing a fertile underground scene?
Great question. Logan. Ponder no more. Answer.
I was still thinking to the wolves with me, I guess. To tackle the thrash thing first. Yeah, that's as far as like what's going on in the U.S., there certainly seems to be some kind of fertile scene, that the kids are enjoying, and they're directly inspired by bands like Power Trip. There's a big, roster of bands that all have that more groove-oriented, hardcore kind of slant to it, like Enforced. Doomsday was a band that was made some waves earlier in the year, I believe. I don't remember the name of their album, but there's just been a couple of bands that do, are trying to combine thrash with something a bit more Texas in style. And I think it does appeal a little bit more to the hardcore crowd and to maybe the younger crowd than the one who grew up in the 80s appreciating bands like this, that really did create the genre and the style. So for thrash, I would kind of agree with your premise, Kellen. It certainly seems like if you are looking for a thrash band that is basically giving you an exciting, honest rendition of what thrash was in the 80s without trying to, just because that, they're just playing what sounds right to them, trying to play a primitive style of metal. I do think you have to go to other scenes, like listening to the Chilean thrash scene. All those bands had their own unique style. I didn't check out a whole bunch, but I listened to Ripper a little bit. Finally checked out Critical Defiance, which they're pretty friggin' awesome. One of my favorites though was Park Crest. Have you heard of them?
Yep.
Yeah. They all had their unique, different style. They weren't all.
Isn't Mayhemic another one of them? Mayhemic?
Mayhemic is?
Mayhemic, yeah.
Yeah.
And Mayhemic from last year was actually a highlight. They all sound different from each other. Yes, that was the album I listened to. That thing kicks ass. If anyone, Kellen knows what he's talking about. I'm sure there's a video on his channel.
There is. He did a video on there. Yeah.
And like you're not going to get that experience here in America. As far as other genres of metal, I think there's still a fertile, scenes going on, but it's not like they're not trying to recreate. Like if you mean fertile, like creatively speaking, they're not trying to recreate what was already happened. There's plenty of bands already doing that. Like there's no shortage of bands recreating what death metal was and certain scenes of black metal and, let's sound like 1995 melodic death metal again. But I think there are bands that are pushing the envelope forward in America and probably over in Europe as well. But they're reaching for more outside sources away from a certain genre or style, and or maybe doing something just a little bit more interesting that you wouldn't normally think of. I want to highlight this band, Zekrades from Canada. It's actually the solo project from the guy from Cathedalist, like a Hellenic sounding black metal band with lead bass, but it sounds like very alien. Like it sounds rooted in like the Greek scene, but at the same time it sounds pretty out there, and it picks up pace a little bit more than what you would think from like Rod Christ or Verathron. And very adventurous songwriting too, and some world building elements. So I think it's still out there. With thrash, you definitely can't do better than Chile.
Jim.
Yeah, I guess we'll say we'll take apart, like, do we still think they're still capable of producing a full underground scene? I think they are, but I do think conversely that there is an over reliance on like electronic instrumentation, which kind of bugs me a little bit. Like, I know how difficult it is to find a good drummer, right? They're very
Try
hard.
Northern Michigan, bro. It's impossible. We got lucky. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you do. You have a great one. But I do feel like it's gotten to the point where, and I'm kind of looking at you, one man black metal scene or 2-man black metal scene, where people aren't even trying anymore to find drummers, and it's all like, oh, we can just program it. You know what I mean? And it feels like that has led to like a glut of like, really phoned in black metal being like uploaded, like, to Bandcamp. And this is a very controversial point I'm making here, but I just feel like I wish people would work harder to like keep that like live instrumentation thing thriving. I think that it hurts the underground scene with an over reliance on just like, programming or instrumentation. I think it's, even though that's kind of like been a part of black metal since the beginning, like drum machines and stuff like that. I think it's gotten overboard. It's like now there's like way more bands that have that than have like live drummers or like, real bass players or whatever. People are just kind of saying, oh, screw it, I'll just like program everything. And then it's harder to find what I feel is like truly like innovative underground music, because you're getting a glut of things that are just kind of phoned in or done.
It's really, I agree with you 100%, but it's really not a band anymore, a project or idol worship. It's idol worship. They're not doing anything to step outside the box.
And, and full disclosure here, I've written some of my own black metal with drum machines. I've written some of my own regular metal with drum machines. I've put out 1-man black metal on my label that was drum machines. So
I mean, it's cool.
Yeah. I'm not saying that it's all bad or whatever, but I do think that it's contributed to like a wave of music that has been mostly mediocre in nature, obfuscating like the truly innovative parts of the underground, which I think could have our prototypical scenes, Western Europe, America, Germany, like raise their heads a little bit more. And so I think if people would just, I kind of wish that there'd be a little bit digging deeper. I feel like it's gotten to the point where there's been so much reliance on just using programs and stuff for synths and stuff like that, that we're dangerously close to AI metal. You know what I mean? And there's even some of that's already out there.
Yeah, too late on that.
And and luckily Metal Archives is like kicking it off, and I'm glad that's their policy, and I think it should be. But I kind of want, I think what would contribute to a strengthening of the underground would be, hey man, let me just learn how to play the drums. Hey man, let me play my own bass lines. Hey man, let me actually play the notes on a keyboard. You know what I mean? I think that would help. So I'll get off my soapbox there. On the other point, geographical and historic bias, I'm not so sure about that part. I feel like one thing that unites metal is it's a worldwide thing. It's everywhere. And that isn't just because the internet, tape trading was going on in the 80s. You've got a huge South American scene back in the 80s, still influential to this day. So I feel like, that I don't really think there's a geographical bias. I don't think that's the case. I feel like there's been a dissolution of quality, as I feel is in general the issue. But having said that, I think that one of the bright spots that, again, we'll lay this at the feet of Kellen, is, for me personally, that Chilean scene, so it feels very authentic. I mean, it doesn't feel like it's completely anachronistic, which it really is easy to do with thrash, because it lives in a realm that I think has more like, hardened borders around its sound than say like death metal does or something. But at the same time, all these Chilean bands that I've checked out, they have this, like, there's a passion and there's a fire there. And maybe that's due to some of that remote isolation. But but whatever the reason, it just comes across as, in general, like a very, very strong scene, and one that isn't at all overly dependent on, like, and a digital crutch to make their music. These are guys doing it the old-fashioned way, going in the studio, 4 or 5 pieces, and playing their instruments and making it happen. And so, yeah, I think that it's that sort of like down and dirty, drive to, the human factor, I think that's what's going to keep the underground alive. And I think that's where we're going to see the true innovation and the standouts come from, whether that be Chile or Poland or, the Sudan, name your country, but I think it's when we adhere to, the flesh and blood instrumentation, that when that outweighs the digital accoutrement, I think that, the intensity of the music is going to shine through. And that's coming from a guy who loves summoning. So I realize that I'm very contradictory, but I'm going to put it out there anyway.
Right on. I don't know. I don't know about this. It's a lot to unpack. And, Jim's whole point about the people, modern technology and has driven people indoors. So is there a scene? Are people getting involved in scenes anymore? I mean, I think Logan's point here that he shared, that bands are trying to emulate a sound more so than, what's going on in a scene. You gotta take that into consideration as well. And is Europe and the US still capable of creating a worthwhile scene? When it comes to thrash, I think thrash, like Jim said, has some very guarded borders. And I think thrash's heyday, early the 80s, I don't think that whole thing is ever going to be replicated again. I think that kind of was a special one and done type of thing. It went on for a long time. It fizzled out, sadly, because of so many bands. The whole adage, there's too many bands, happened to thrash. And, labels were seeing the popularity of the bigger bands and signing up everybody, all these lesser bands that maybe didn't deserve major record label deals. But I think good thrash is still capable of being made. Obviously, tonight we're going to talk about a band that's really good, and the Chilean scene, what I've heard of it, is sounding really positive. And, there's all sorts of, letting the Spotify play, it suggests tracks in the algorithm after, you get done listening to something, and it played some cool stuff. Bands I've never heard of. So, I mean, I feel so removed from this whole, I used to be a thrash kid. Still am a thrash kid at heart, but you start mixing thrash with black metal or a little bit of death metal, and I guess that's really where it's gone. It hasn't really gone anywhere new or creative or interesting. And I think really, from me being a musician, I think you're kind of cursed by what your formative years of listening to music were. I listened to tons of thrash and early death metal, and my guitar playing kind of went on to subconsciously emulate what I was listening to. Not saying I'm going to rip off Carcass right now. No, one of my first death metal bands, I would write these killer riffs that I loved, and then a week later playing it, realized it was note for note something off of Necroticism. So I'm like subconsciously ripping off these riffs that are rattling around in my head. And I think that's just kind of, if you listen to scenes throughout the world, something big happens in a certain part of the world. There's a lot of bands that look up to those bigger bands, and they start emulating their idols, essentially. So, I mean, it seems like when bands go and try to do something to push things forward, it's usually so weird or off kilter that it's alienating in a way. So it's a hard question. It's a very hard question for me to put my finger on and answer, because I don't know the answers to it. I can just look around and see what's going on now. And a lot of killer, great music. People's musicianship over the years has evolved to a point where, you know, people can play superhuman style the way that you could not play in the 80s. You know, they're just practice and techniques and all sorts of things have changed. So by rights, things should be moving in a different direction, but they kind of just stay in the same ball field. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. I don't think I've answered your question here, Kellen. Is maybe just putting more on the pile, but I don't know if either continent can generate a worthwhile scene. There's good bands everywhere. Chile is definitely proving that, you know, I listen to this here. Is it anything new? Is this Mental Devastation anything new? It really isn't, but it's freaking awesome. It's really well done. The technical proficiency is virtuoso state. There's this, the musicianship is amazing. So you can still write great music within the parameters, the rules of the genre, and be awesome. And I don't need it to be with new bells and whistles. I just need it to be good. What do you think, Kellen?
Unmute myself. Yeah.
Sorry for the convoluted roundabout way of answering.
No, it's okay. It's like a big kind of question. So I didn't know. I was trying to kind of get to the heart of it without doing too much of the context sort of conversation. But it's interesting for me. Thrash seems to be like a perfect sort of case study in bands that had attempted to do something with the classic material and just ran into an absolute dead end. So much of the thrash in the 21st century for me, and at least initially, was kind of like a parody of itself. You know, you look at Metal Devastation, there's no like super tight jeans and white high tops. Like, they're not doing that at all. So it's not the look that they're trying to replicate. They're just trying to create solid music. But I think what's interesting is like playing within the margins for me. Sure, this is a bit more of a progressive, like there's things about this sound that sound very familiar, but it also doesn't sound like a complete sort of rip off of something, or there's no sort of cheap artistry or musicianship here. To Jim's point, like there's something happening where it feels like enough of the German influence, enough of the American influence. But I think there's something interesting where, like, if you're not coming from one of the countries that is constantly getting sort of spoon-fed all sorts of classic records on a consistent sort of, you don't have the same access, you don't have the same exposure, you don't have the same labels are circulating. Like, I wonder if that removal from like constant circulation is going to be helpful for actually doing something creative, but also something that is classic. That element of posterity is what I was interested in. Is, to your point, like, yeah, there's bands who could be super technical or just push the limits of what is possible, but it ends up being alienating. It doesn't sound like it appeals to a traditionalist aspect of what thrash is.
And also, I want to jump in here for 1 second. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, because us metalheads, if you do something a little bit wackadoo within, if it doesn't sound like the way that the nostalgia is in our head, you're ostracized right away. I mean, so that could be part of it as well.
So for me, like, I think they do what makes Chile special is they do enough of the familiar while also having something interesting to offer, at least, or entertaining to offer. And that is a difficult line to walk with thrash in particular. And I just think I sort of open the window into, I think one of the constant frustrations we have is so much of the metal we listen to sounds like a direct reference in a way that feels like somehow secondhand, or sort of a life within a shell of a previous band. And it is not enough creativity. And I wonder if that is like a regional or geographic contribution. Meaning, if the greatest strides, I just wonder if the greatest strides that are going to happen in the 21st century with metal are not going to be from the countries that have primarily produced it. That it's going to be from different parts of the world that are going to approach classic records and have something to offer based on a different kind of cultural, historical perspective. I think that kind of interpretation is really interesting for me. That, because as an American, like, from the time we enter this world, we are being sort of fed our history back to us. And I think that can end up producing sort of a cycle where we just end up emulating the very same riffs that we sat down to listen to for the first time.
Yeah.
And then I think I want to add into that, to Jim's point, a part of me also wonders, like, most of these bands out of Chile are coming out of Santiago and Valparaiso. And I wonder if there's a certain element of, like, you don't want to be upstaged by your peers kind of deal. Like,
Competition.
there's this, and I just think great scenes have that element, right? Where you see a band that is potentially signed and there's an opportunity for you to make a name for yourself. And it's very limited resources and access, right? It's going to be difficult for a label to go to Santiago and bring you in. So you better stand out. And I wonder, for these young bands in Chile, if that has sort of bred a certain level of, like, we just can't be mediocre. We don't have the same level of exposure of resources. So we're going to have to do something special to stand out amongst our peers, as opposed to being like a death metal band in Portland, right? Where it's like, okay, we are part of this. And, like, that doesn't mean they're bad bands. I just think there's so much more infrastructure built into that community to sustain itself, as opposed to being on some different part of the world where you don't have that level of sort of access and promotion. And I wonder if that just makes a young 20-something-year-old musician be like, I just can't be an average bassist. Like, I have to want to be Steve DiGiorgio. You know what I mean? Like, I think you hear that on this record. These guys have been around for a little bit, but they're still relatively young. And there's a certain kind of fire to this scene that I think is producing a level of competition amongst the thrash bands where they need to be exceptional. And maybe they don't, to your point, they don't reproduce 1984 for you or 1985 for you. But they are not going to be a forgettable band. They think that they've made some sort of, desire for that. So that could also be like my fanaticism coming through there. But I do think there is something special about bands competing for visibility when there are limited resources available.
And really, you're right. These guys have to be exceptional musicians, because, I mean, the days of, I'm a black metal band in Norway, that usually meant, hey, you got a record contract now because you're from Norway. Or German thrash metal back in the day was a thing. Bay Area thrash. If you were in these 3 points of the world, chances were the dogs were sniffing around. The labels were sniffing around for sure. So, yep, you got to be. Nowadays, you got to offer something other than the same old thing. But if you don't do the same old thing, you're also harpooned too. So I don't know. Who knows? Great question, though. Holy crap. We can do a whole damn show on that probably. Let's discuss the musicality and composition of The Delusional Mystery of the Self, Part 2. Logan.
So yeah, for me, thrash in 2025, I guess I try it out from time to time, but it never ends up sticking the distance, Like, I looked back the past couple of years at my year-end lists, and it's been a bit since the thrash album actually made it up there, I think
Vector, back in when those were coming out, those were kicking my ass. I loved it.
It was a decade ago, man. Hard to believe.
I know.
But yeah, that was like 2016 was the last one, and yeah, I'm with you on that. If we count Decision as thrash, then that will probably make the cut this year. But then once again, you're going a little bit into what you were talking about, where it's like the only way to make thrash appealing is to almost have it be an add-on, or like, this is the accent. We're changing death metal by making it a bit thrashier and stuff. It's not necessarily a standalone genre for me. And I think, to kind of get back to your question again just a little bit, because it's a good question. I think you could take into a whole episode for sure. I think the fact that they're not trying to replicate any one band or sound, and they do seem like they're competitively trying to come up with their own take on just playing fast and technical, is indeed a big plus for them. I mean, they have a unique sound. They have a unique blend of, instrumentation and the vocal delivery by is it Alejandro? But yeah, mental devastation sound I found immediately interesting. I immediately thought of like the late 80s, early 90s, like prog kind of thrash, Watchtower, Sadus, Anacrusis. But for me, since I'm more familiar with death metal overall, I was thinking Death's Human and Atheist Unquestionable Presence, just with like how prominent the bass is and how liquid feeling the songs are. Like especially like it has that unquestionable presence vibe, where the songs will just fluidly move and they're not necessarily sticking to a concrete pattern or flow. Like
nothing sounds awkward either. All the transitions are smooth as silk. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't know where they're really going with it. It all feels a little open ended. And it's exciting when you're listening to it. For me, it's a little not frustrating, but a little like I can't really remember too much after the fact. At least for me, like it's so maze driven. It's tough to sink my teeth into it, and have me have moments that I'm like thinking back on and want to hear again. There are a bunch for sure, and I'll talk about them. But like that, I feel like that's just kind of the aesthetic that they're going for, like almost like that Death Row album, Deception Ignored, where it's just like a winding maze of endless technical riffs. Except somehow I think this even ups it just a little bit. Yeah, plenty of tricks up their sleeves though. Like they're more than just even a thrash band. There's a lot of like cool atmospheric adding devices. Like there's like some synths that make me think of Cosmic Sea off of Death's Human, and even some like a female vocal presence that pops up on one of my favorite tracks, Pulsion, in the middle. And yeah, just very impressive experimentation going on. And the instrumentation across the board blows me away. It's all locked in to each other. The riff writing is exciting. The bass work is the ultimate highlight for me. And when they do lock in, and especially when there's like a tempo change or something, it's the highlights. Like there's a tempo change about halfway through Judge and Jury, and it gets me every time. I'm like, I might lull a little bit in the middle of that song, but then it comes up and it wakes me up and I'm ready to go. And that does happen throughout this album, where there is a dramatic tempo shift that does feel a little progressive in nature, but it's still smooth and you don't see it coming, but it works when it does pop up. They kind of get on the vocals a little bit. Yeah, I don't really know if they're for me. The staccato attack that I guess sounds like Killian a little bit. It feels right in the middle of the mix, and it kind of overshadows other stuff for me. Marty, I like your metaphor where you're saying you just want to peek through the blinds and see the music around it the whole time. I would kind of rather at times just be instrumental. Or I wish that they tacked on the death metal influence. Like if he was doing more of a death growl or a higher rasp vocal, I know that would probably they would lose some of the uniqueness that they have, but I think it would connect with me a little bit more, and it wouldn't necessarily be a distraction. And this is more of a personal issue than a mental devastation issue. It's probably just preference. So just putting that out there as well. But yeah, no, everything else I think works phenomenally, impresses me big time. One of my other highlights though is that even when they tone down and they're playing more minimally and a bit quieter, it's still exciting. Like I actually enjoy the interludes and the playing that they're doing with the guitar and bass. So yeah, big fan of all the instrumentation.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, musicality and composition. I alluded it to my initial assessment earlier. Yeah, these guys are really, really talented musicians. The way the riffs are kind of structured together. Like, they don't stick around too long, but yet they're played enough where you can remember them. You can connect to the riffs and really enjoy them and admire them for their technical proficiency and just their tendency to make you want to rage, make you want to thrash out, bang your head. I mean, it's all there, but but they neither linger too long nor are they too short. I think they really are great at putting a lot of interesting bits into 4 to 5, 6 minute long stints, and keeping it intriguing the whole time. So really difficult to do with a modern thrash band. We keep alluding to that a lot of the thrash elements have done before, but there's just something about the way that they write here that it and the sort of like where they come at you very quickly, like the riffs are in and out, the tempos, there's a lot of the polka / skank beat kind of a thing, tempo, and it really helps propel the riffs. A lot of them are there's a lot of scale based riffs, picked note riffs, a lot of triplets in there, played really fast and really accurately, which is another really cool thing. Is, this is a dual guitar attack, and these are really intricate riffs, but there's no sense of sloppiness. I mean, yeah, you could say, well, hey, it could be just one guy in the studio or whatever, but I'm going to give these guys a benefit of the doubt and say that they're just really tight musicians, and that's the way it sounds to me. We obviously, can't understate the impact of the fretless bass work on here. Really adds a really cool dimension to this. I definitely was thinking Sadist a lot, listening to this, and
Cynic.
Yeah, Sadist, Cynic, and for me, I mean, yeah, there's the remasters, but it's individual thought patterns from Death. I think you can hear Steve Giorgio's playing a lot more on, and especially that sort of warble, that wah kind of a sound he has on that sort of bass tone. That's what I think of when I hear this record from Mental Devastation. I hear more individual thought patterns, and also fuck whoever brought that down to 80% on Metal Archives. That's a great fucking record. So I just want to tell you, individual thought patterns is fucking awesome. So suck my dick. Anyway, but going back to the dynamics thing here. All these cool instrumentals, but they don't overstay their welcome. If they were longer, it would get kind of annoying because there's 3 or something, but luckily they're brief. And I do get, Frosty in the comments was like, hey, one of these things sounds like Chris Isaak or whatever. and I know he's talking about track 8, the Do one with a weird symbol over the top. It's quiet, it's uber melodic, very jazzy, kind of proggy, a little bit. Sort of has this dreamy feel to it. And if it didn't go right from there, into the title track, it would be a little annoying, but it happens to be placed right before one of the heaviest, most banger songs on the record. So again, when you're talking about the composition, we talk all the time about arrangement of the songs, right? It's not just putting the songs together individually, but it's also hey, where do they land on the album? How does it work in the context of every other song? What's the order of the tracks, and how do they all connect and disconnect? These guys are great at that, mixing up those really more progressive non-metal moments with pure thrash abandon, the way they kind of pepper in these other elements that speak to their musicianship and their outside influences, but not to a point where it's oh, okay, now we're going to sound like Pink Floyd for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? And I'm not going to name bands here, but I think you may know who I'm talking about. That's not what these guys are doing. They give you little glimpses of what they can do, but because, they're more put in there more of a sort of a flavoring on the album as a whole, and they're spaced out correctly, it just adds to the color of the record without taking away from the heaviness, without pulling you away from the thrash. And I really like that element of the record. And for me, it lent to the listenability to it. So I commend these guys not only on their individual musicianship, their really killer riff writing, the dynamics within the songs, the way each individual member shines, how they kind of put their best feet forward, but also the arrangement of the tracks. What I felt was just spot on here. And it's not something that a lot of bands get exactly right. And I think it's one of the best things they did on this record. You know, it has a great ebb and flow to it, you know, that makes that I never felt bored, like, you know, starting it back over. So that's
Awesome assessment, Kellen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was happy to get this right. I did not intend this was going to be my pick like a month away when I knew it was going to be my turn. But to get this right before or right after Forbidden, I think made a little bit of sense for me. Just we kind of talked about, they're a great sort of frame of reference in the sense of there's a familiar kind of California thrash to this, but a lot of the same superlatives where it's like the technical riffing it's super tight, but it never gets quite overboard for me. Maybe it gets close to somewhere like Deception Ignored, but I don't think quite, it's not a tech record. Tonally, that bass sound pushes this in one regard sonically towards a prog. Like that sort of smooth to you know, that way it drifts up into a mix. You hear that bend. 100%. That gives me like prog vibes immediately. There's that cynic sound from Malone, DiGiorgio. I do think also, let's just talk about like the imagery and lyrical content. There was a decided, like, that works well with the kind of tech story or prog story they're telling here. I think you couldn't have this kind of imagery and talking about sort of self-reflection and you know, psychology, despair, that sort of, which is a driving force. The band's called Mental Devastation and play brutal thrash, right? Like there's a certain kind of symmetry that's happening here in terms of the lyrical content, the image, and the kind of music they're playing. I will agree here. So just let's quickly talk about vocal content. I understand the potential pushback in terms of his delivery. But I do think if it had become more aggressive, it would also disqualify it from what I want thrash to sound like. It would push it into sort of extreme thrash, blackened thrash, death thrash. And while at some level we are more comfortable hearing that in 2025, as opposed to like sung thrash,
I think I agree with you here. Yeah.
This band got a lot of violence comparisons early on, and it was 100% for the vocal sort of bark sort of delivery, which is an interesting juxtaposition to how fluid the musicianship is. I think to you know, people who potentially have a difficult time reconciling the two of them on this album or for this band in general. But I do think it also roots it in a 80s thrash sound. Love it or hate it, there's a lot of very polarizing vocalists in 1980s thrash. Just that should be said. And this would be one that would qualify in the same sort of breath. So I get sort of the discomfort or listening to his sort of delivery, but the idea of him going through this vocally and simultaneously playing the bass on this record is just bonkers to me.
Pretty impressive.
Just so you know that the two major songwriters here are Alejandro Logos, who does the bass and vocals, and then Matias Morales. So Matias is the guitarist and principal songwriter for the band. And they have been together throughout the entirety of Mental Devastation, and are sort of the primary musicians here. But I can go on. We'll get to the songs, favorite songs. I'll kind of talk about them a bit more in depth, but I'll kind of leave it there in terms of songwriting style.
One thing I noticed going through I'm wondering what other bands these guys are in, thinking it would be just a bunch of others. Not really. I mean, Alejandro is in Calvario and Necro Ripper, but the other guys, I think there was only like one other band between the other guys, and yeah, nothing I really have even heard of. But the vocals, I think I'm with Kellen. I don't want them more aggressive, and I was kind of surprised to hear the violence comparison, because I didn't get that at all. I don't hear that. I hear more like a melodious Kelly Schaefer from Atheist. Kelly would go to more of a raspy shit, but this here, Alejandro is very much, he's kind of yelling a little bit, barking a bit, but he's got a bit of a pitch singing in kind of mixed in with it too. So I never found the vocals annoying. I just wanted sometimes just to get past and hear them. I'm so impressed and enamored with the music on here. I just wanted to see past the vocals sometimes, but without them, I think a whole album worth of instrumentals, I think that'd been pretty boring. So I like where they sit in the mix, but sometimes I just want a bit more of the riffs. But as far as the composition and stuff, I'm aligned with Jim on this idea of the instrumentals add a really nice dynamics and flow. You know, you start the album quiet with that intro, and you end with that synth piece, which kind of gives you a bit of reprieve after 40 minutes of a thrash ass whooping. Basically, is what you're getting here, a technical thrash ass whooping. It's nice just to kind of go out on a brief but kind of beautiful piece there. But as far as the songwriting goes, there's nothing that feels awkward. There's never a time shift that seems wrong or off, or it's a really well considered, very masterfully written album. I really nothing to complain about, or other than, in spite of its technicality, the album, the more you spin it, it becomes very inviting. I kept wanting to listen to it again and again and again, because there's just it comes from a place of familiarity for sure, but it also the music is so engaging, and that the fretless bass adds such a classy, puts a nice classy bow on the whole thing. Let's talk about the production. Logan.
Oh man. So outside of the vocals not quite clicking with me, the production was the other hindrance of my experience. It just felt a bit compressed overall. Like, the whole band was being shoved in like a tube or an elevator or something, and it was all like coming at you from kind of the same spot. Like there was not the room kind of feel. It's just like trying to get as much as you can through like a fire hydrant kind of sound. And I mean, inherently it's not a bad thing. Like I can enjoy albums with that production where that's the style, but for me, when there is this much going on and it's so technically proficient and so well done instrumentally, I want to be able to hear and make out as much as possible. And I think I would like to be able to isolate the individual instruments a bit more than what this production allows me to. And then you throw the vocal performance on top of it for me, and that's kind of the what broke the camel's back, if you will. Like when the vocals are going on like full pell-mell, and everything else is also it's a bit much at times, and I not able to make out too much, and it kind of blends together. My ideal moments in this album are when there are no vocals, and it's more of a like the dynamic instrumentation is allowed to like breathe a little bit more, because there are moments where I think the production sounds absolutely amazing and I think fits perfectly, and those do seem to be the more dynamic moments where the bass can shine through and the individual melodies are allowed to kind of stand out, like that song Pulsion right in the middle. that's a big highlight for me. And I was a little like kind of shocked and like, you could do this the whole time. You guys could sound like this the whole time with the vocal performance, because Alejandro does change up his vocal barking a little bit. I mean, of course, there's the clean singing, which blew me away first time I heard it, but he also does step back the rapid fire approach a little bit in this song, and I think it works perfectly. And I'm able to follow the song a bit more. But it's just when everything is going on all at the same time, it can be a bit much. But as I said, there are still good parts of this production. I love how the bass is mixed, and when the bass and the guitars lock in, it's perfect. And I'm focusing on that, and it sounds very organic. Like, this is not a technical, dead, sterile production. It's a very organic and lush and even kind of warm sounding production. And on those quieter moments, that's when I think that really comes through. And the fact that the music tends to, be more dynamic like that helps as well. So, yeah, I definitely was just scratching my head a bit about how to approach the production. And honestly, it would always take a song or two for me to get past, oh, this sounds like this band got thrown into a blender, during the more intense parts of the songs. But I do like parts of it. I'll let someone else kind of weigh in, balance me out.
Kellen.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from in terms of, this is a record I don't get like a lot of spatial cues, right? So I can only imagine. Now it does say that the person who's mixed and mastered this record has done a good amount of the bands coming out of Chile in the thrash scene, which is probably why they went to him. But yeah, I could totally understand in terms of how much of this was produced in a way that is not analog or the things that we would love to get in terms of greater dynamics, in terms of spatial elements within a record. I get that. I didn't tonally, though, to kind of echo your point in terms that was positive. Like, I enjoyed the guitar sound, the bass, cuts through when it needs to, and I think that's a big part of the sound of this record. Drums, like all those elements, while I think there's some limitation in terms of what their production looked like based on studio access or the recording environment in which it was in, I do actually like tonally, it's rough enough for me where it doesn't sound like a completely just computerized, overblown record. So I think that is one quality. And the other thing is, I do think the cleaner passages are handled very well as in addition. Meaning when they need to get proggy and they want that element of the sound to come through, Chris Isaak or otherwise, I think it also works for them in a complementary way. It is an aspect to their sound, and they do capture like those cleaner passages in a way that I think complements their sound appropriately. So there's some slight variation prior to the Delusion Part 1, but close enough to it where I wasn't disappointed. And I think there's a lot to be happy with given whatever limitations they're working with.
All right, Jim.
Look, man. Yeah. This sounds like a thrash record, dude. This is the way it's supposed to sound, man. I held this up earlier. Like, this is what it sounds like. It's hitting the bricks. It's in your face. I don't need like a lot of like depth for punch you in the face thrash. I think that this sound is perfect for what it's supposed to be. I mean, it's what I like about it is like it's technical thrash, but it has like an ugly thrash sound to it. I think that's what makes it cool, right? And instead of it sounding like Opeth or something like that, it sounds like an old school thrash record, but with just crazy chops. and it's such a great mix. Like it has that makes it to me more aggressive. You know what I mean? That makes it more interesting. You know, if it was like a super clean, you know, production where, you know, and I do think there's good separation between the bass and guitar, by the way, but if there was like ultra separation where the drums sounded, you know, super, you know, like slick, you know, or and then it just wouldn't be the same. You know, I don't think it would have the energy or the power that it does if it didn't sound the way it did. So I'm gonna uh uh you know, and I think, you know, it coming up in my era, like it sounds like more of the like the bands that were kind of down and dirty, you know, pushing their way up from the underground, you know, like you know, these guys don't sound like Latter Era Testament, you know what I mean? You know, they sound like, you know, someone who, you know, had a couple of demos and had their first record come out. You know, it's like, you know, almost like, you know, Exodus's first record or something like that, but even not even as clean as that, and even dirtier than that. And but I think that's great. I think that it makes those moments, you know, where, for instance, where the bass is like running scales while the guitar player is just playing like a straight, you know, triplet based riff. Like it makes those moments even more intense. It makes those moments more interesting. You know, I have a completely opposite experience with the production, you know, than Logan did. It's one of the things that I loved about the record. It has a warmth to it that kept coming back, and I loved like it has a very organic drum sound to me. It doesn't feel like it. You know, I don't feel like I'm hearing anything triggered. I feel like I'm standing in the rehearsal space with them, and while they're smashing on the toms, and that's what I want to feel when I'm listening to aggressive, powerful thrash, you know, and they deliver on that front. And at the same time, when they put in all these like little proggy interludes and stuff like that, I still think they're well produced. I think they have a great like emotional impact. You know, it sounds like, you know, very melodic and moody without sounding poppy. And I think that's sort of like, you know, underground, you know, knob twisting, that's that mix that makes it sound like, you know, whether it was intentional or not, you know, makes it sound, you know, below board, makes it more powerful. And I wouldn't change a thing about it. I absolutely love that aspect of it, and it played into its replayability for me, you know, having that. I think if it had been real slick and super produced and all that kind of stuff, I feel like for me it would have been more forgettable. You know, it lent itself into being a heavier record by sounding more in your face, you know, and you know, and not like easy on, you know, the ears. It sounds like, you know, a very hungry and very aggressive band, with almost like a DIY aesthetic to it. You know, that it made it more pummeling in for me. So for me, you know, I had my experience with production was like it was right on, and I would say don't change, guys. I like.
Yeah, the production is right away. It the thing that's cool about it is it doesn't sound like everything on the modern market right now. It doesn't sound like they're plugged into, you know, plugins and all that. So Jim's completely right. To me, the feeling like you're in the studio with them while they bash it out. And I remember I'm like, what is it about this? The guitar sound, it just seems like there's more mid-range dialed up in it. There isn't, they didn't accentuate all the brights. And I'm kind of like brought back to when I was younger, my first band, take our demo going into the local studio, who didn't know anything about producing metal. We'll bring in something you want to sound like type of thing. I can just see this band, them, the producers telling that, and them walking into the studio carrying Darkness Descends by Death Angel. That's a very roomy, brutal. If you were to take Dark Angel out of that record and insert Mental Devastation into that, I think it would have worked. I mean, the production kind of feels the same to me a bit. Maybe this is a bit more on the underground side, but it isn't necessarily super bright. It's more of a reverb or mid-range pummeling.
Yeah, a lot of mids. Like it's
Yeah.
not scooped on the EQ. You know
Not
what I mean?
scooped, yeah.
And hey man, I love plenty of stuff that is scooped. I ran my own rig that way, you know, but as I've gotten older, my tastes you change. Like when I hear something more mid-range like this, it's more powerful to me. It's more in your face, you know.
It's meaner.
And yeah, it just sounds meaner, man, you know, and I feel like it really brings out, you know, like you need less distortion if you've got more mids, you know, and these guys have just the right amount of distortion, and that mids kind of carries it over to the top with that aggression. So, you know, if it had like a super bright tinny treble or super low bass or low end or whatever, it would sound like a fucking death metal band. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like, and, you know, it reminds, like Kellen was saying about the vocals, like, you know, take those vocals out and it's not thrash anymore. Right. You know, that sort of, you know, spitting aggressive vocal, like, and those mids and all that, like it combines to make a really good thrash record. Lean too far out of it. And we're doing what everybody else does with thrash these days. And that's like, inject black or death into it, and I love plenty of stuff that's like that, but it's so rare to for me to hear a modern thrash album that gives me that same sort of in your face feeling, that it doesn't need any other subgenres like injected into it to give it like relevance, you know. And so sorry to cut you off there, Marty, but
No,
you're zoning right in on it. And but that's exactly what I'm saying here is no, man, they're bucking all that. You know, these guys didn't walk in there with Injustice for All in their hands. Yeah, they walked in there with Darkness Descends in their hands, or, you know, they walked in there with some crossover thrash from the 80s in there. You know, that's what they walked in with.
Yep.
And that's what I hear here, and that's why it's awesome.
Yeah, no, and again, I've left not offended by the production at all. It works in this instance. It doesn't sound like, you know, keep bringing up Testament, where they got the Atlantic Records pocketbooks that they can have the best, absolute best sound, and, you know, you got the bass tone that sounds like someone's banging on a wire is what it sounds. The bass tone is clanging through, and, you know, slick top of the line 80s production. This wouldn't have worked, although the music is technical and mature enough to warrant such a production. I think that it didn't need it. I think the music stands on its own merit here. You know, long as everything's got its own lane of clarity, you're golden. And they nailed it here. It could have been a little brighter, maybe here, a little more sheen. Sure, maybe, but it's not, and it doesn't take away from anything. I think the production's fine. Favorite, least favorite songs? Kellen.
So for me, the standout track that I think that was also the lead single is the third one, Mankind. That kind of has like this on off, but then they kind of like will stop for a moment, come back, stop, and then it leads into the next one, is a little bit elongated in terms of the phrasing, and then we finally get to the chorus and boom, punch. Like that trio of riffs, I think, is the standout moment, and I would point anyone towards, you know, people approaching Mental Devastation for the first time. The third track here is one I want to recommend for you. I just love, like, there's times when I feel the riffing is complex, and if you're paying enough attention to it, though, the bass is doing something underneath all of it, and it stands out. It's a signature moment on this for me. Yeah, so Frosty will, I'll agree here. The same sort of thing as I'm saying in terms of memorable riffing. The seventh track, which I think is the Primitive Pass that he's referring to there, also a standout. those to me feel like the most approachable sort of riff moments for me. The track that bears the band's name, Mental Devastation, which I think is track number 6 here. That to me feels like the most, I don't want to say like claustrophobic or sort of knotted together tech moment on the record. There's a whole lot of tension in terms of the riffing style for that. So you really have to wait till you get to the bridge to feel any sort of dynamic release. But I think it's a good glimpse in terms of like how technical they can get. Logan brought up Pulsion. That kind of sits right in the middle of this record and it stands out. Kind of the same way we were talking about with Summoning, right? Where you get the sort of the song vocal, the female sung vocals in the middle of that record on Stronghold. Pulsion is sort of a track of two tales, right? The beginning of that is probably the cleanest moment. We get kind of Alejandro doing like a attempt at singing in the beginning of that. It's the kind of clean vocal thing going on.
That's my only complaint on this whole album is that part. That whole ballad part right there. It's not ballad, but it kind of wants to be.
They want to do something prog there, and they're asking him to do some sung vocals, and you can tell it's not his comfort zone.
He does okay, but the song ends up being awesome. But I just don't like the way it starts.
But the song takes off and probably has one of the most the highlight solo for me over the course of the record. The solo on that track, you get this elongated passage where the solo just sort of continually kind of crawls up the neck, and on one of the longer sort of standout passages for me overall. So for me, though, I do think there's no like clear failures on this record in terms of, and I do also want to point out the pacing of it. So I think Genetic and Esperanza, which is the closer, is another. So they're bookended by kind of instrumental passages.
Yep.
Pulsion, the one I just brought up, is our little prog break in there, and then Dio is another sort of lead in, which goes basically that is a part of the album title track. It really just sets up the 8-minute epic towards the end of the record. I feel they're kind of linked together, so playing it through they would seem seamless. I just think it's a good sort of like the pacing overall to kind of echo Jim's point in terms of crafting this so it feels like it's a well-paced album. Is another sort of strength in terms of the track listing. Is I do think they have sort of very well-defined sort of like moments to exhale over the course of the listen before you get into all this technical riffing. So another sort of quality thing I wanted to bring up in the songwriting there.
All right, Jim.
Yeah, man. Permanent Paths for me all the way, man. I absolutely love that song. Definitely agree with Frosty there and Kellen. That's the song where they're playing the riffs and the bass player he's just doing these runs, just in key runs behind the wrist, completely different than what the guitar playing is doing. So I mean, you've got a really badass riff and then a really killer bass line over it. All that's even before like the vocals start. He does a really cool bass slide, like he does that bass slide like Kellen was talking about earlier. Really cool riff and lead interaction there. It's like they're playing different, like the lead is like he's just kind of playing off in space. Like it doesn't match the intensity of the crazy thrash riff at all, but yet it somehow works. It locks in. It's completely in key. The lead is phrased really well, but it's like if you take that lead out of that song and just like played it by itself, it'd be like really mellow and kind of chill, but backed with that crazy riff, it sounds otherworldly. And the way how they put that arrangement together, I don't know how they did it, but it just works. And it on paper it shouldn't, but it does. It's one of the highlights of the album for me. And also, like, I really love the thrash style when there's just a lot of the kind of fast triplets, and that's all over that song. So absolutely, Primitive Paths, track 7, definitely a highlight for me. I love Symbiosis, which is the first real song after the intro, Genetic. Again, killer bass lines behind the guitar solo. So you got something, you got shredding both going. You got a killer guitar solo and you got killer bass lines rolling up behind it. Cool where they go halftime with double bass around the 2.5 minute mark, and it's a good kind of headbanging type moment there. Lots of repeated scales over and over, so definitely interesting as a musician to kind of just listen to them just like shred over that stuff. Mankind, that one was okay for me. I wasn't as into that one as much as Kellen was, but I absolutely love the title track, man. I mean, dude, that song, Delusional Mystery of the Self, there's gang vocals midway through it, which is a pure thrash tenor, and it's I don't know what they're saying, but it just sounds cool. Go, go, go! Like whatever they're saying, it sounds cool. I tried to find the lyrics and I couldn't, but I wanted to yell along with it. It was like a really cool thrash moment. There's at 3 minutes in, there's this cool interaction between the synth bass and the 6-string guitars. Like they're all together and they're doing something really intriguing, which you don't really hear on the rest of the record and the metal moments. So it's a really cool placement, and it's cool they waited till the end because it's almost like a crescendo of like of instrumentation that you hadn't heard yet. So a nice touch there. And then at 4 minutes in, there's like a mellow death riff that comes in. I was like, what? That sounds like melodic death metal. I was like, I was like, wait, what's happening here? But again, like you're like, is this gonna work? And they pull it off. They make it work. It's a mellow death style riff, but when they all come in together, it's thrash again. And so it actually ended up being yet another cool dynamic of their songwriting. Unexpected but cool. And again, the drummer, like his standout for me on this record is his cymbal and his ride work. He just knows he just knows how to get that ride in there and like bring up the intensity of the song, bring up the aggression of the song, really cool cymbals and stuff like that. And that song he really shines, for his cymbal work on. So that one, super highlight for me. So 7 and 9, definitely the strong elements for me. And usually I would diss on a record that has an outro that's like mellow, right? But it's really brief, and it really is more like an outro. It's not really like a song. You've got something very intense right before it. So to Marty's point earlier, after 40 minutes of thrash, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with them kind of like, lilting out on a chill note, only because the 5 minutes you heard before or 6 minutes before were smack you in the face. So yeah, Kellen's point, there's no weak moments on this record. I didn't do any track skipping. There were no cringe moments for me. Even on Polshin's, like I liked the ballad thing. I thought, hey man, he's got like a cool. I thought he had a cool singing voice. I thought it was kind of cool. It could have gotten old really quick, but they punch into the thrash really fast after that mellow moment. And so I think it's balanced out right. If it had been like a true power ballad, like back and forth and like big choruses and I love you, babe, maybe we'd be having a different conversation. But that wasn't the case. Like, just a little bit of an emotional moment, just a tiny bit of clean singing, and then, thrash you to death. So, they maintain their integrity there with just a little bit of interesting vocal and acoustic, electroacoustic take on there. So, yeah, for me, if you don't listen to anything else, Primitive Pass and the title track.
All right, Logan.
Yeah, I mean, there are no bad songs on this. It all fits within the feel and the vibe of the record. And, for me, just talking about the production and like the vocals, I'm just trying to explain why for some of these songs, I'm just kind of left not remembering much. Like I remember like moments here and there, but not like a full song structure. So like the first
there's more than 2 riffs per song. That's the problem.
I know that's my issue. Like, I'm gonna send them some sleep albums, and then maybe they'll balance it out. We can get like a healthy 4 or 5 riffs.
Here's Jerusalem. Take notes, guys. One note.
I want you to
more
pay
riffs.
to riff 1. that stays the whole album.
Where's the beef? Anyway.
Like Symbiosis and Mankind, I really don't remember too much from those songs. I mean, it's good. I enjoy it when I'm listening to it for sure. Judge and Jury, it perks my interest. There's this really cool transition of tempo change right in the middle. Feels like a very technical riff, and once again the bass just perfectly accents that as like the song kind of careens into a different direction. So I enjoy that
exactly
song.
what you're talking about, Logan. There's this cool bass chord right before it goes to a faster.
Yep.
It's like brown, and then it's
Yep.
a great moment.
It's like
that's
right
a
at
good
the
song.
halfway mark, and man,
Exactly.
it just wakes me up, and I'm here for it. And then it goes into Pulsions, and I'm with you, Jim. I like him flexing his vocal chops. He sounds a bit like a love struck like Epic Doom guy, you know. But
Yeah, there you go.
he immediately goes into, I mean, that's only like a line that he's doing that.
Right.
And then when he comes back, it starts to get a bit more harsh. And then he kind of goes to where, you know, he is the rest of the album, but I still think it's a bit more reserved for the rest of the song. And to me, I like this song the most on the album. This is my favorite. It stands the most separate from the rest as being, I know exactly where the song is going. I've been able to follow along with the 4 riffs that are on this song, and I'm able to enjoy as it kind of builds, because it is a track that builds from the beginning ballad moment to the end climax, which it does have a very cool crescendo with the great guitar solo. And great track, the one that really has stuck out with me, and I leave every time I leave the album, I leave with it in my mind. And then going towards the end, the title track is a mammoth accomplishment. I do enjoy the title track. It is a bit of still like a maze in the first half, but like I do enjoy my music being a bit, you know, winding at times, and I think it hits pay dirt about halfway through. I don't know if this is the melodic death metal riff you're talking about, Jim, but there's a phenomenal bass line going on underneath it. And it sounds so locked in with what the guitar is playing. Yeah, it hits me every time. And then from there, it builds with the gang vocals, which I absolutely love the gang vocals. And it feels like the ultimate payoff of kind of the album. And I do enjoy the interludes. I think the interludes are a great, you know, just space from the chaos, and it shows off just how amazing these guys are as musicians and how versatile they are. They're doing the Chris Isaac thing, you know, and it sounds awesome. Sounds good. I'd listen to that again for sure. So yeah. My thoughts on the track listing.
All right. For me, I really, really love when the album about the midway point starts getting faster. They really dig in with some amazing stuff. On the Delusional Mystery of the Self, it's one of my favorites on here. The right-handed palm muted crunching is super fast, and you listen to it in the headphones, and both guitar players like completely in perfect sync with each other. It really is impressive, and it adds to the intensity of the song. You know, there's amazing speed and instrumentation on this one. Definite standout for me. Primitive Paths is probably my favorite on the album. Absolutely intense track. The riff work is intricate, technically swirling with a memorable thrash melody line. It is kind of infectious. And I love how the bass and the guitars interact throughout this track, and of course the whole album. Again, the music break is the best part of the song for me. Really, really solid there. Mental Devastation. This track kind of has, it's a very ripping song. It has that US thrash spirit to it. It sounded the most US out of the whole batch. It's technical without succumbing to that unlistable complexity. The aggravated riffs, they just keep swinging at the listener the whole time, and it's awesome. They're just really good. When they get fast, they get really, really good for me. Least favorite is, as I mentioned, Pauljan's. It just a nitpicky that beginning where he sings well, but I don't. The album isn't preparing for you for this. So when you get there, it's just like, what is happening right now? But it goes away quick, and around the 3-minute mark, they really did dial back into that thrash, and the track gets super heavy from there. I will say, on that Do song, it's a guitar only instrumental. My note says, are these guys all graduates of a musical university? Because that's like, it's so gifted and it's adventurous at the same time as being gifted, and it sounds like a band full of virtuosos. It's crazy. It's tasteful and beautiful. I like, see, that bit of sidestep I could take more so than the ballad-esque swipe, but I do like how Symbiosis fires off the album. We talk about strong openers, and this track is very much a thrash metal mission statement. It's modern yet firmly rooted in the old school. They're not ashamed to be there too, which is great. It's got the US and European thrash characteristics, and complex riff work, aggressive palm muted crunching, and the fretless bass work. I should start off with this one, but I did not. There's so much texture and uniqueness going on in this first track, and it gets you, it props you up and gets you ready for what's to come. It's a great lead off, and it really sells the rest of the album really well. Mankind, another favorite. There's no denying how tasty and mature that middle section is right around the solo. So expertly composed and colorful. It's very impressive songwriting. And again, I look forward to when they get to these moments where the singing stops and you can really hear all the time they invested into composing these music breaks. There's just the bass doing what it's doing and the guitars intertwining. There's like a bit of a melody line, and it's just so well done. So tasteful. Love it. Great. It really is a great record. Judgment, final thoughts. Logan.
Yeah, this was a good listen into a scene in a style of modern thrash that I really have not checked out. And I mean, to me, I call it a success because I was able to check out all these other Chilean thrash bands along with Mental Devastation. And as I said, I really enjoyed Critical Defiance and Park Crest. Still don't know what to do with that name, but that album and The Blue Will Turn Red is savage, and it kind of makes me think of Sepultura, kind of like Schizophrenia era, like, As for Mental Devastation, I ended up feeling fairly conflicted with the album. The musicianship is top notch. I love the instrumentation. I agree. I don't know if I could see it being just an instrumental album. I think there needs to be some kind of vocal presence. And I mean, you guys got me that it's cool that they are doing just a thrash vocal. They're not trying to change it up and do what is trendy of the era by making it a death thrash or a black thrash. And obviously I was like kind of thinking that because that's more of the comfort food that I'm used to, that I'm like, I can understand this a lot easier than what Alejandro is doing on this album. And so that ended up being one of those sticking points for me, and I still think the production is kind of one of them as well. I'll hopefully return to this and maybe have a different mindset. For now, it was still a tough listen at times, a very exciting one at others. So as I said, I do feel fairly conflicted about it because I did enjoy a lot of the instrumentation and the bass especially, and like the moments where the music can kind of breathe and have that space is just epic, very well done proggy thrash. So for me it's a 7.5 out of 10 for now, which I mean it's not, so it's a good album. I still liked it. I don't know if I would pick it up or if it'll end up popping back up towards the end of the year or in the future, but time will tell.
Jim.
This was, a nice surprise for me, and a great listen, as I missed last week's Forbidden, which I was super looking forward to talking with you guys about, and super bummed that I missed that. So it was nice to like, segue into, a thrash album that I had never heard of. And that's new and very capable and very strong, man. I at no point got tired of listening to it. And I still feel like there's more to give despite the number of spins that I did over the last week. So with my would buy, wouldn't buy, or would buy cheap, like this is a would buy for me. I would like to have this because I feel like I'm still diving into it. I still feel like there's more to gain. So for me, it fits right into my wheelhouse. I mean, obviously, I love old thrash. New thrash I don't listen to as much. I don't listen to Toxic Holocaust or Municipal Waste or any of that stuff. I don't like any of that. But the stuff that I hear, like I said earlier, coming from the Chilean underground, it feels authentic to me. When I hear the best of those bands coming out there, I feel sort of transported back, to my era. And because there's just like this like hunger beneath it that feels very familiar to me. And I love the mid-rangey attack. I love the crazy technical riffs and bass playing, and I want to hear more of it. So yeah, I'll be picking this up.
Yeah. I'll let Kellen go last. It's his pick. Yeah, I'm agreed. I was pleasantly surprised on this one. Granted, I'm kind of locking into the black metal time of year over here, but so I don't know if I'm going to run right out and try to find this right away, but I really did enjoy it for a modern day thrash metal release. It unveiled a lot of intrigue. The songwriting is very top notch, and yeah, it's a good 8.5. I'm gonna go with 8.5. Frosty's ranking is pretty solid there. It would probably grow on me a bit more the more I listen to it. It's been a fun week digging into it though. Good pick, Kellen.
Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a passion of mine. It's a part of the world and a scene that I think, I hope, down the road in the decades to come, I don't know how long this will last, right? There'll be a time period most likely when this starts to fizzle out. And
everything's cyclical.
Yeah, it happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it all comes to an end, I hope, I myself and others who are documenting it and paying attention, will be there to kind of talk about how this was sort of a special time period, at least from when a genre, to Jim's point, really struggled. There were sort of pockets of artistic creativity happening in corners of the world that were trying to keep it alive. I obviously have dedicated myself to this. As soon as it was released on a Chilean label, I had no problem picking it up because I knew, one, like I kind of want to, hunt this down, archive this for the years, and I'm happy that we hadn't talked about a new release this year. I don't think this gets a lot. I don't think really much of anyone has covered this, and it's one of those things where if this is just about kind of talk about things we're passionate about, I think that the lesser known stuff, hopefully someone comes across this stream, if not tonight, then in the coming months and years, and gets a glimpse into a part of the metal world that they have not heard about. And hopefully gets turned on to this, because I do think it's worthy of consideration.
Right on. Great pick, Kellen. And for next week, we've got Logan's turn to pick.
All right, everybody. You guys
time to cleanse the palate.
Yep, you guys scared me off with all these complicated riffs and time signatures, and let's go back to the Stone Age, or to the Dope Age.
Oh no!
I Hate God, dope sick. I'm seeing these guys Saturday night, so I'm taking you all with me. This is their 1996 album, I believe. So yeah, going Nola Sludge.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Sounds fun, right?
Yeah. All right. Anybody have anything coming up on their respective channels that they would like to plug?
I don't have anything on my channel, but probably whenever I do have a review coming out here for Heavy Metallurgy. So
It'll probably won't be edited tonight. It'll probably be edited
Yeah.
tomorrow, probably for Friday, because the album drops Friday.
correct, yeah.
It'll be up on Friday for Friday. Cool. Very good. Logan, you anything going on?
I got to get off my ass and record something. So we shall see.
Jim, how about you? What's going on?
Nothing new. Waiting on artwork from the band we're working with. I offered to give them some help with it, but haven't heard back yet. So still kind of crickets. Which I guess last week I was indisposed in hotel hell, so I couldn't have done much anyway. But yeah, hopefully more to come on that. So.
Awesome. All right. Well, for Metallurgy show notes, we got a review coming up from Kellen. Alan submitted a review as well, which will be up next week. And Friday night, Alan will be gone for the evening, and we're going to have Daryl from Celtic Frosty's channel on, and also Jimmy from Future Ruins. A week or so ago, we talked about favorite or excellent songs that end an album. We're going to talk about favorite excellent songs that begin an album, because we wanted something easy. So there you go. Should be a fun discussion. We'll show a lot of cool stuff with a couple awesome guests as always. And yeah, that's it. Till next time, Friday. See you all later. Thanks for joining us tonight, talking about some Chilean thrash, and cheers everyone. We'll see ya.